everyone. My name is Gary Kalazzi, and I'm the CEO at Alexa Translations. Lawyer by training, I spent a lot of time in this space. For many years, I was on the board of the Legal Marketing Association. So this was initially, it's an international organization, but I was ultimately even the president for Eastern Canada. And during the years that I spent there, you really see the need for proper business development, whether it's strategies, techniques, and also training. Law schools seldom spend a lot of time training lawyers on how to do business development, and yet we know how important business development is to career advancement. Anyone that has worked in private practice knows that without some business development, it's very hard to progress and to really get on that partnership track. So that's what prompted this webinar. We started doing the first version of this in the middle of the pandemic in 2020, and we thought, hey, let's think through what would that look like in the sort of under these circumstances. And then as we went past it, we're like, okay, there's clearly a need to talk about this well beyond the pandemic, and that's what brought us here to our fifth annual webinar on business development for lawyers. So I will start with some introductions of our panel, and we'll do this alphabetically. So Allison, if I can ask you to introduce yourself first.
Sure. Thanks so much for inviting me today, Gary. Anyone that knows you knows that you're the expert in business development and should probably just be giving this lesson on your own, but really appreciate the opportunity to be here. So I'm Allison Harnick. I'm SVP, General Counsel, and Corporate Secretary of First Capital REIT. And I also oversee our environmental programs with a focus on decarbonizing our portfolio. Just a little bit about First Capital. We're a publicly traded REIT, and we own and operate a portfolio of primarily grocery-anchored retail properties in 136 neighborhoods across Canada, mostly urban or sort of top-tier suburban, highly populated, dense neighborhoods. And I came to First Capital about 8 years ago now. It's flown by. I was in private practice for several years before that at Torrey's in mostly a securities law practice. So got thrown in-house here. First Capital was a client, and I came on board as an interim general counsel, and then I never left. So that's kind of my story, and I will pass it on to France.
And Allison, thank you. Just one, I'll add a little bit about each one of you following your introductions, because we're supposed to do this about business development. How do you meet people and then actually bring that all together and the story behind it? But I met Allison through the Women General Counsel. Allison is actually Women General Counsel Canada. She's on the board of the organization. We even helped put an event together. And you know, when you actually hit it off with people right away, I knew that she would be really good at sharing the insights from both a GC perspective, but also as somebody that had been in private practice before. So Allison, thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you.
France, on to you.
Thank you, Gary. And of course, I echo Allison's comments about Gary. You know, he's not only a master BD in Canada, but internationally. I can tell you that I bump into him in many different, in airports, in airplanes, in many different places around the world, which is actually really, really cool. It's always wonderful to see you, Gary. So thank you for having us here. My name is France Tanai. I'm a partner at Gowling WLG in Toronto. I'm initially a business lawyer, but I have practice and expertise in mining, primarily mining and energy and nuclear areas. I'm originally from Venezuela. I practiced law in Venezuela for about almost 6 years before first doing a master's in the US and then coming to Canada more than 25 years ago. So I've been practicing for over 30 years. I lead the Latin American initiative for Gowlings, you know, obviously for that reason. And I have the ability to work with people pretty much around the world. Gowling is an international law firm. We are UK, Canadian owned and or led. And we have offices in 22 cities around the world, including 7 in Canada. So pretty much an international nature of my practice.
Thank you, France. And as promised, I actually met France around 2012, 2013 through an event in Hispanics in Mining, and we had stayed in touch since. You should see Franz at some of the major international events, whether it's the International Bar Association conference, but especially PDAC, the PDAC, the big mining conference that is here. During that week, Franz is one of the most popular people in Toronto, and you'll see her being omnipresent, largely switching between English and Spanish, and doing business development at a true international scale. So thank you for joining us, Franz.
Thank you, Gary.
And Ryan, on to you.
So thanks again, Gary, for having me. I mean, anybody that knows me knows how much I love business development. It's near and dear to my heart. I am a banking partner at Dentons. I head up the national banking team at Dentons across the country. And before I was doing banking law, I actually was in business. So I was doing an international business career. I decided to go back to law school a little bit later in life. And I've been at Dentons now for 11 years. For me, it's been a phenomenal platform. It's the world's largest law firm, and it really allows me to, provide services to my clients anywhere in the world for whatever they need. So once again, Gary, thanks so much for having me.
Oh, and Ryan, thanks for joining us. I met Ryan through the Dentons platform, but also through some common connections that we had, and we hit it off pretty quickly. And again, that's when you know that when people are good at business development, they learn to add value to others. And Ryan has been excellent at sort of building some bridges across the board, and I know we'll be friends for many years to come. In addition to that, we had a little bit of overlap at Windsor Law, which always makes it's a great attribute to Ryan. So I know some of the audience members joined us a little bit after we started introductions. As another, just a quick housekeeping item, as we go today, if you'd like to ask any questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. I'll intertwine them as we go. And at the end, the panel will share some sort of a round robin of tips that they have as we wrap up at the very end. So I'll start with the first question. And again, at the beginning, I talked about how this has evolved since the early days when we kicked it off as an event that was meant during the middle of COVID. And certainly that seemed, in some ways, it seems like it was a long time ago, but yet not that long ago. What trends have we seen? How have we seen business development evolve over the last sort of 5 years? And how are we seeing business development get done now in a way that is evolved in that time frame? And Allison, if you don't mind, I'll start with you, and just in terms of what you're seeing, so as a GC, and then we'll go Franz and Ryan, and then for the other questions, I'll switch the order just so that we all have an opportunity. But I would also encourage you to jump in if any of you want to add on something. We don't have to be terribly formal about this.
Sure. So sort of post-pandemic, I think one of the good things that's happened since the pandemic is that it sort of forced us to develop relationships in a more casual sense. So instead of lunches, dinners, parties, big concert tickets, and all those sorts of things, people were doing what we're doing right now, speaking on Zoom, speaking on the phone. And I have to say, making that relationship and that contact easy is sort of, I would say, the number one principle that you should abide by. It's like when you have a group of friends, it's much easier to reach out to the person you speak to every day for a quick conversation than to have all that build up to reach out to, an old law school friend you haven't talked to in 5 years, and you want to carve out the right amount of time, make the necessary preparations, make sure that you have that great catch up. And so I find, at least for myself, I tend to put those more significant, bigger catch ups off. And I really think, sitting sort of on the client side now, that when I go to pick up the phone to call a lawyer, an external counsel that I just want to bounce something off of, it's the exact same principle that I keep in mind. It's that easy relationship. It's the person that, I touch base with frequently. And I think, post-pandemic, we're all a little bit more used to doing that, letting people into our sort of quick and easy lives. It's that call from the car, or, sending an article. I think for more junior people, if you're trying to figure out ways to keep up regular contact that's not as formal, where you don't have to get a group together at your firm and make really, elaborate plans, you can just flip someone an article. If someone sees something on grocers and they know that our portfolio at First Capital is primarily tenanted by large grocery operators, they might flip it to me and say, oh, I saw this interesting thing in the Globe. No need to follow up, just thought you might like it. Those are the people that it becomes very easy to touch base with. And not that I don't appreciate a nice invitation every once in a while to socialize in a more formal way, but I think those relationships are harder. And so I really encourage you to kind of ride that post-pandemic trend and just keep up regular contact and try and develop those easier touch points that can develop into business eventually, because I want to call the person that requires the least amount of preparation and is going to be the easiest to talk to. And so that's usually someone that you see or speak to frequently.
And Allison, it's such great advice. Because at the end of the day, there's a behavioral psychologist that I've always liked his material, and I recommend. He actually came to speak at a legal marketing association event that I mentioned earlier. His name is James Kane, and he says, for my service provider or anyone that I go to for service, them doing a good job at what I hire them to do is my sort of minimum expectation. When they go above and beyond, do something I didn't expect that adds value, that's like that makes them invaluable. That makes them irreplaceable. So I think, to your point, becoming easy to speak to and creating that environment where it feels natural for the clients to do that can be so meaningful. So appreciate that insight.
I mean,
Franz,
Gary, just
go ahead, Ryan, please.
yeah, I mean,
No,
just to add to a couple of points there. I mean, one of the things I've seen is that, during COVID and afterwards, there was a lot less business development being done. I think that especially junior lawyers, they were not coming to the office, did not have the ability to go to business development events with some of the senior lawyers to watch how that skill is sort of being developed. The legal profession was really, really busy. A lot of people were drinking out of the fire hose. And when you have so much work coming in, that muscle of having to go out there and trying to create those relationships starts to really sort of dwindle. And I think that now that we've got back to the normal, people are coming back in the office, there's been 2 or 3 years of a lost skill that people have to sort of regain. And I think that it's really important now with the advent of technology and AI, where some of the legal work that we're going to be doing in the future is quickly going to become commoditized. And the importance of those relationships, which I truly believe cannot be commoditized through technology, is going to be that more important. So, I'm glad people are back in the office, because it's really, and I think during one of these prep calls, we talked about the idea of, rather it being business development, it's really more relationship development. Creating those true, authentic relationships and doing that over a computer without actually being in front of people, that's very hard to do. And I think people now are pivoting back to doing much more stuff together face to face.
And
Ryan,
I know you certainly. Sorry, Franz. I'm chiming in after each one of you, because I see some of you doing this live, and Ryan, certainly seeing you in a lot of events and even with the FaceTime at the office. I think starting with practicing what we preach with our juniors becomes very important to them on that front as well. Franz, please.
Okay. No, it's both Allison and Ryan have given me really good points to actually, a little bit pick on. So firstly, let's start with something that Ryan said about relationship development. At the end of the day, BD, and it's really not BD, but your work is about connections, right? It's you being able to connect and relate to your clients. And if there's no connection and relation with your clients are not, you're not going to become a trusted advisor. You're not going to become the person that their clients are going to want to call or I want to actually rely on. And that doesn't happen overnight. That requires time and effort. But at the end of the day, it's like building any other relationship in your life. And when we were practicing this and we were discussing before, I mentioned the word intentional. I believe that when it comes to relationship development, business development, connections, really creating your client base and your relationships, you have to be intentional. Now, picking on something that Allison said, before COVID, it was a little bit more automatic. Law firms had already plans, they have law firms relied on conferences, and the partners will have the dinners and the tickets and the events that Allison was making. Then COVID came. And one of the beautiful things that happened with COVID was the fact that we stopped having conference calls where we didn't see each other and having to plan for it. And then we all overnight became trained on seeing each other in here. And with that, another thing that happened, and because we were in our lives, two things happened. One is that Allison used the word casual. It became really casual to the point that I can tell you, I would be in my home and with a cab coming out of running and meeting with my clients, right? People stopped worrying too much about having the suit, looking perfect, putting the pose, and people started really connecting more at the personal level. We were all going through personal life change crisis. And with that, we all got to know each other better. So what happens afterwards? What I actually think that is happening afterwards, and I think it's actually something that I really appreciate that came out of COVID, is that casualness. Nowadays, whether I'm working here, I am doing this webinar from home, I'm doing it from the office. It doesn't matter where I am. My clients now really don't care. Before, there was the expectation that you were going to be at the office and the clients wanted to see you at their office. Now clients don't care. And with that comes the fact that, as Allison said, well, sometimes they call me and I'm picking up my son in the car, or I'm doing this. And so you have an opportunity to take down the walls and be more personal, and then treat your clients and your relationships more personal. And I do believe there's an immense value in that at all levels. Having done this, as I mentioned, almost now over 30 years, I can tell you, we all want to work, clients and lawyers, with the people they like. So, and you do that by getting to know the people better. So I think that's one of the things that has happened, and I think that has changed, and I think it's really important that we managed to do that. So there's many more, but I'm just going to stop there so we can continue the discussion. But I just wanted to bring that to the attention. I think it's easier and simpler. And if we all just simply, as Allison said, worry more about connecting than anything else, it'll little by little, you will be able to build over time a really good relationship.
And France, it's such a good point to think of COVID as an opportunity for reset, because while there were challenges that happened with it, it was also a unique opportunity, because we would have seldom changed our behavior that quickly had it not been for an event of that nature. And I remember an investment banker telling me in the early days of networking in the around Bay Street, and he said, "Gary, don't confuse activity for progress. Be strategic about things." And I think sometimes when you follow the motions without a reset of that nature, you do activity without necessarily thinking as strategically. They gave us that opportunity to really think through and say, what did add value and what are the best ways that resonated with clients? So I think the true unique opportunity in that context.
I just remember one more point, but I can leave it later, because it was what law firms are doing differently. But we can do that. We can do that a little bit later.
Please make a note of it, because I do want to hear about that.
I can
And
tell you.
Ryan, the next question I want to start with you, and then certainly have Allison and Franz add to it accordingly. What are some of the BD strategies that again, as I mentioned earlier, you're omnipresent. I see you out there. You, from F1 events in Montreal to international events of networking to doing multiple lunches and coffees throughout the week while still building and running a practice. What are some of the BD strategies that you have seen have resonated for you and that work well? And then I'll ask Allison and Franz to see sort of what they've seen resonate as well.
Yeah, I mean, for me, business development was something that I used to associate with sales. When I used to hear the word business development, I thought, oh, I don't want to be a salesman. It sounded like a really sort of dirty word. And so there was really sort of a mindset shift for me that was really important, which is I didn't want to be selling. I wanted to be sort of developing authentic relationships where I could help people. I felt good about that. And so that was really my style. How can I find clients or people that I can develop relationships with and help sort of solve their pain points. So that first shift in my mind was really important. The second part was that I used to be, as a junior lawyer, very nervous to do business development. I was worried that I wouldn't have anything to talk about over lunch. I would worry about they'd ask me questions. I had nothing to say. And I used to look at some of these business developers at the firm and think, wow, that's a natural thing that they just automatically have. And what I realized is that business development truly is it's a muscle, it's a skill that takes time that you refine over long periods of time. And I really sort of encourage the junior lawyers to start planting those seeds and to find what their style is sort of as soon as possible. For me, I can tell you that the relationships that I've been able to build through business development is my favorite part of the practice. These are my now clients, but also my close friends, where when I'm out doing these events that you're talking about, Gary, there's no doubt there's a lot of work that's involved. But to Allison's point, when you're surrounded with people that you truly like and you're truly invested in their business, it doesn't feel like a task. It's really part of my business that I enjoy. Now we're talking about specific things that I found that's helped me develop my book of business is one, take a long-term view of the relationship and the approach. So when you're meeting people, I often will see people looking at it almost as a quid pro quo relationship. I've done this for you. Can you give me something back? People smell that right away. It doesn't have a good look. Try to go into a relationship and think, is this a relationship that I want to build, not for the next 6 months or for the next 2 years, we're talking 20 years, and understand that you might not get an immediate return on that relationship, but it takes time. The second part is I love to business develop in teams. So, when I'm working with people within my firm, I have certain expertise that I can bring to the table, but I've got a whole massive team behind me that I can also bring to the table. And it's tough to really say good things about yourself, but it's easy to really to pump the tires of the people you work with closely. And, clients don't want to have just one person they can turn to. They want to know that when they have any kind of problems, they've got sort of a full team of people that can solve their problems. And quite frankly, it makes things a lot more fun internally where you reduce that sort of elbows up sort of culture and it's more of let's do this together. So that's really helped a lot. The other part is also recognizing that when you're trying to develop relationships, don't say, I'm a banking lawyer and this is where I can help you. You really should try to take a look at all the different pain points or all the concerns or issues or things that are keeping your clients up at night, whether it's going to be banking law, legal, whether it's trying to get in front of a certain contact, and try to be that hub in the wheel. So no matter what their concerns are, what their issues are, you can leverage your network or you can find a solution for them. If you try to paint yourself into a corner and say, this is what my particular expertise is, you really are sort of limiting yourself. So in the interest of time, I'll sort of stop there. But just wanted to, really hammer home the point of any junior lawyers are on this call. It's something that there's huge ROI in doing this. I know it takes a lot of time, but it can be really becoming one of the best parts of the practice of law.
And Ryan, the for all the marketing and BD professionals from law firms on the call, you touching on cross-selling at a firm, key thing that they always push lawyers to do, but doesn't always come organically. And it shouldn't, cross-selling should happen organically, is to your point, to think of it as how can I add value? How can I resolve the pain points for this client as opposed to let me just try to sell you more. And a couple of the points you made reminded me of a book by Adam Grant called Give and Take, where it actually sort of says people are typically in three categories: givers, takers, and reciprocators. And sort of reciprocators, much like you described in one of the examples, tit for tat, like I'll do this because you do this for me. And the takers are just more sort of like I'll generally just take. And then givers are the people that are paid forward first. And he said the most successful people tend to be strategic givers. So these are people that, much like you do, Ryan, put that hat on, like, what can I do for you? How can I help you? And then naturally, when you approach it with that sense, the ability to say, how can I help you, really resonates with people because they are a lot more open, a lot more willing to cultivate that relationship than they may have been had it not been for that approach initially. So I sometimes as a moderator, I get a little too involved in the questions myself, but I think it's the passion around this. Allison, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I can. I'd love to run with this thread a little bit because one of the notes I made was how important it is for the lawyer that's sort of pitching me or another person in-house to understand how what you're pitching fits in with that person's legal spend or previous relationships. So, I've met people that I've never worked with before and really enjoyed their company. And then what I love is when someone does, exactly what Ryan said. Um, how can we help you? What areas are you sort of struggling in? Or I know that you have a very strong relationship on the real estate transaction side with such a and such firm. So, there's probably not an opportunity to work together there, but we have this and this, and would love if you're trying to spread the work around or if you need help with something else, like just understand where you fit in so that you're not sort of beating a dead horse. Like I think some people just come knocking on the same type of work over and over again, and if I have a go-to person on that already, that just makes my life harder to then start divvying that work up. But I had actually a very junior person, I think a first or second year lawyer, start reaching out to me and, being interested in our business. And he was really lovely and he'd send me articles. And I kept thinking, like, I don't know how I'm going to work with this person. Like, I just don't have any appropriate work to give him. And then a couple years later, something came up where my usual firm was conflicted and I really wanted to give him something and it wasn't his exact area, but I said, hey, do you have a partner that does this that you could get involved? Great firm. I know I'm going to get good service and I'd love to work with you. So just understanding where you fit and not trying to squeeze yourself in as like, a competitor where you're trying to push someone else out, that's so hard and you're going to meet resistance there. But if you can find a natural spot where you can help, it might not happen right away. It's an investment. But I think it's really important just to show and demonstrate that you understand what you're pitching and where you can kind of maneuver to fit in to someone's, you know, legal roster that makes sense for them and makes things easier, not harder for them. Because you don't want someone coming to you sort of out of guilt or obligation. That relationship won't go anywhere. And so I just think it's really understanding that perspective. And then something I was never, ever good at in private practice, but I'll say it anyways, because, I'm guilty of not asking for what I really want. So once you have the relationship, it's like, you don't have to act like sort of a sleazy salesperson and you're trying to close the deal, but it's okay to say, hey, I'd love to work together. I know you might not have an opportunity for me right now, but I think what you guys are doing is really interesting. I follow your company. I'd love to work together. If anything ever comes up, like, please let me know and we'll keep in touch, but no pressure. And it's just, making that an easy call because one day something will happen and they'll think of you. So, don't be afraid to kind of close the deal and be that salesperson. I think lawyers have a really hard time with that because it's not what we were trained to do and probably not why we went to law school, but it's okay, to open that door a crack and then see what happens.
Well, Alison, if I may, just before I pass it on to France, I mean, as you know, I've spent time sort of as a lawyer and certainly on the business development side as you build a business. And I think demystifying that sales should not feel sleazy is extremely important because the only time it is that is if you're selling people something they don't need and you're lying and being sleazy about it. But if you're approaching it with a value add approach, then it's never sleazy. It's and everyone that has watched the movie The Wolf of Wall Street says sells me this pen, and then you hear him talk about it afterwards. One of the pieces he actually says it's, whenever I tell people that, they never come back to me with a question, being like, "Hey, have you ever needed a pen? What do you use a pen for normally?" It's like qualifying questions to say, "Can this pen actually help you?" They all say, "Oh, this is an amazing pen. You should use it." And he's like, "That's fine, but you don't understand what they need, and understanding what the client needs is so important before you could actually even do something. And then it doesn't feel sleazy, and then it's value add." So sorry, France.
There's no need to be sorry. We're all experts here, and it's wonderful to get everybody's input. And all I can do is build upon, the wonderful advice that already Ryan and Allison has given, right? So I'm gonna tell you my perspective, the way that that shift that Ryan made, and that the way that I did it and the way that has worked for me is when I understood that at the end of the day, this is a business. And you, whether you're a lawyer, as a lawyer, you are a business person and you're carrying a business. And particularly when you become a partner, this is your business. So in the moment that you stop thinking about, I'm a lawyer and I provide this service and, I'm just this, and then you see that everything that you're doing is a business and you have to work and create your business, I think helps you with that shift that Ryan was mentioning. And to that, I can tell you that, for example, things that we're doing after COVID, to help people more is precisely to instill these principles. And I have done courses internally at the firm where we talk about to our associates since day one to create a business plan. But why do we tell them? And everybody's like, a business plan? I'm a first-year associate. What are you talking about? And it's to help them understand that, listen, your job number one is to hone your skills and become, the best technical lawyer that you can be. That's, as Ryan was saying, that's a given. That's, you can't, that's a non-negotiable one. But you can be the best lawyer in the world, but if you don't know how to approach clients and how to win business, at the end of the day, you're going to be, maybe some people will refer you here and maybe some of them, but at the end of the day, your life is going to be very limited. So if you work on a business plan and you start thinking about what your goals are going to be, who you want to be, the type of practice you want to have, then you start thinking about what the opportunities are. And you can do it. There's opportunities internally and externally. Internally with the firm is connecting with other lawyers, connecting with other practices, working with other people, getting to know other lawyers within the firm that they know, so that as you guys grow together, in the firm, and the lawyer in real estate needs a corporate lawyer, he's going to call you, and vice versa. You're the corporate lawyer that gets a client that needs a real estate, an IP, a litigation lawyer. You start creating your internal network. Is your first clients are the lawyers that you work with at the firm, and your first referrals are the people that come at the firm. So you do that, then you start thinking outside, and you start again, and I think COVID also helped with this, start thinking differently. Think about affinity groups, think about sports group. We try to talk to our younger lawyers to not be single-minded or one-dimensional. My practice, my life, my clients. If you start thinking about in a multidimensional way, we all are multidimensional individuals. We all have many different likes, many different interests. And if you start understanding that you can find clients and connections, look at you, Gary, how we all met you and how you met us, interrelating and participating again in your love of sport. Well, pay attention, get out with your friends at the sport, listen to what they're doing, listen to what they're saying. They're growing, they have businesses, they have needs. And little by little, if you just start being intentional and pay attention, it doesn't mean that, oh my God, you're feeling, a hypocrite because you're having a coffee with somebody that you like and you're thinking, oh, maybe it's going to give me a coffee. You just don't know that. But pay attention, be intentional, think about it. I think that's something that is actually really, really, really important. And again, as you were saying, when you connect with people outside and when you start thinking as a business and then you connect with clients, I love what Allison said. You have no idea how many times I have approached clients and I said, listen, I know you have a fantastic lawyer and law firm working with you. I'm not here to compete with them. I'm just here to let you know, that basically we are here. And this is the other thing. Particularly younger lawyers, they always tell me, well, but it's horrible to talk about yourself. I don't know what to say. Well, perfect. Talk about your firm, talk about your peers, talk about your friends, talk about the practices. You have so many other things that you can talk about that is not you if you don't feel comfortable because you're still too young. You haven't developed a practice. You haven't developed a skill set. But, whether you're in-house, whether you are in a law firm, you are part of an organization. So talk about your organization. Be proud of the people that you work with, the organization that you are with, and talk about them. And I think that's a fantastic way. It takes the pressure away from you. And you are, again, relating to others, promoting others. And again, the more selfless you are, I always believe that the more you attract to yourself, because again, nobody's going to see you as you're coming in and trying to sell the pen. You're just connecting. You're letting other people know if you ever need help. Listen, these are all the areas and we can help you. Just let us know and we're here. This all goes together with get to know the client and get to know the things what they're doing, etc. But it's just trying to kind of bringing together what Allison and Ryan said, that it was so great. Just putting it together a little bit and giving, particularly for the younger people, that are trying to find a way to do things, working with others, referring others, letting others be proud of your place of work, whatever that is, and promote. It's your best BD tool that you can have at the beginning while you develop your skills to basically feel proud about yourself, which you always be, but it's something that takes time.
Thank you, Franz. A lot of really good takeaways there, and I want to comment on one of them. But before I do that, I'm going to come to you momentarily and ask you about. You do a lot of international business development as well, and part of my question is, how do you make sure this this can be done when you have people in different countries and sort of with different needs at sometimes different jurisdictions? And before I come to you with that for that answer. What I wanted to really encourage, especially in the audience today, and some that will certainly listen to the recording, there are some lawyers that are early on in their career, and what Franz said about it's never too early to start is so key. You almost have to think of it as just like how you have a certain amount of hours you have to do for billable hours, you have to think of business development and relationship development as part of that. That go meet people, get to be known out there, and the work will follow. And it won't follow after one or two. You don't go to one or two networking events and expect a whole bunch of work to come in. It is a true marathon, but starting early is important. So Franz, back to you on international.
So I'm the fortunate. Actually I have the privilege, to be really honest. So as I mentioned in my introduction, I'm originally from Venezuela. I was a Venezuelan lawyer, and then I came here and I had an opportunity to become a Canadian lawyer, being in Canada for 25 years. And even though at the beginning my focus was 100% Canadian because it was the only way that I could become a Canadian lawyer, later on in life, I've had the fortune to be able to leverage my international background and to actually do and grow business. And I came to Gowlings 10 years ago precisely to grow, the firm and the business in Latin America. And one of the most important things that I found was that I've saw a lot of relationships between, Canadian lawyers and international lawyers, which I think this is a principle that should be the same no matter what. When you're working with people in other countries, you don't look at them as your tool in that country. You need to look at them as another part of a team. And care as much as you care for, with them as much as you care with any other lawyer here in Canada. I saw so many times lawyers that, most likely without any intention, oh, they don't need to know, they don't need to participate in the call, they don't need to be involved, they don't need to know. And at the end of the day, you're not helping your client and you're not helping anybody, because again, a well cohesive working team works better for the client. So one of the things that I do is that when I work with local counsel in any other country, I make sure that every time we're going to have an issue before, for example, speaking with the clients, we always connect. We always make sure that we're aligned. We make sure that we clear all that up and that everybody knows all of the facts before going to the client. Now, how did I build that connection in the first place? Well, it did require a lot of travel, I have to say. A lot of travel. I have to go and see them. I have to be and again, try to offer them a different approach, an approach of, again, teamwork, connection, and similar the same way. To be really honest, you're doing busy with them the same way, that because they will refer you work as well. The idea is not only that you are going to have tools and resources for your clients when you're doing business in another country, which is critical for your clients, and your clients are going to love and appreciate that. But it's also, if you do this well, they will be referring you work. So the same way, it's the same principles applies. You establish connections and relationships, and you care about what they do. You care about who they are, similar that you would do with your clients. You get to know of their strengths strengths of their firm. You show them the strengths of the firm, of your firm or your work or your company, and then what you can actually bring and where you can collaborate together. It's always a collaboration approach, and it's never a one-off. Many people take it, I'm going to sell, and there's nothing else that they can give me, or they have to give me this. They always see it again too singular. And in reality, it's always more than one aspects. You know, we're all, as you were saying before, you said give or take and some reciprocators. It's always about reciprocating. It's always about, matching the effort and the interest and making people feel valued. What everybody in the world wants is to feel that they matter. So if you make people feel like they matter, that goes a long way, and that applies with international clients, business development. I've been very fortunate by precisely with these principles with law firms in other countries, and little by little your name starts to go out, people start getting to know you, and it's all about, again, being accessible, having relationships, always making sure that if anybody sends you an email, you always respond. You never don't respond, even if you respond late, but you respond. You always make sure that people feel respected, and it's all about respect, collaboration, connection, consideration, which to me, to be really honest, are the same principles that if you apply those in your life, everything starts to go as part of the same. I don't know if that's helpful.
No, it is indeed. And Ryan, I want to give an opportunity. I know being part of the largest firm in the world, it's an important piece. The only thing I wanted to remind the audience, in the event that they had any last minute questions, feel free to throw it in the chat. And I'll see if I can sneak it in before we wrap up today. Ryan, back to you.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to echo a couple of points that Francis said, and I thought they're really good points. I think a lot of times we have to sort of say to some of the lawyers who are new to the practice, there's international work, but why should we spend the time to do the traveling and do some of that actual work that for a lot of people it seems like it might be a bit more difficult. From my perspective, when I decided to join Dentons 11 years ago, and I see this now, my wife's a general counsel at a large accounting firm. The legal pie in Canada is in some cases shrinking. I mean, there's more and more organizations that are trying to bring legal work internally within their organization. You've got technology that's trying to take care of some of the commoditized work. Once you sort of look outside of the Canadian border, you realize that the legal pie is so massive. And if you have the ability to be able to service your needs, their needs around the world or in multiple jurisdictions, there's very few lawyers that think internationally. And that really allows you to separate yourself from other people. You never want to be commoditized. You want to be viewed as something different. And a lot of the organizations, they really have some kind of international view. You take a look at what's going on in the world right now. People are now reassessing what their supply chain looks like. They're looking at different ways to sort of reinvent their business. So I think international is a huge opportunity for very few people that are really trying to fish within that area. One of the other things I wanted to say is when you're doing these conferences, you have to be very strategic both before and after the conference. If you're going to be doing the traveling, and that's even the same thing too when you're doing it locally. I'll often see people, they'll just show up at the conference. They'll show up, they'll walk around, and whoever they happen to bump into, that's who they bump into. They give out some business cards, they feel really good about themselves, and they go back home. That is not a good use of your time. You have to spend as much time as possible saying, if I'm going to be going to this conference, why? How's it going to help my potential clients, that I'm currently working with? Who are the people I need to prep before I go? Make sure you're meeting with those people, and then make sure you do the follow-up. There's so much time where I see people will go to these events and they never actually follow up. And you have to do that as much as possible. The other thing I've also found with Dentons is that we might have 10,000 lawyers around the world, but there's still very few people within that Dentons network that wants to put themselves out there and say, I am looking to work with you in China or Singapore or Australia. So you quickly want to be known as that person that has an international bend, that's looking to work with people across the different countries, because what will happen is that gets around, that becomes a reputation saying this person, he's a team player, he really likes to work together. And to Francis' point, which I thought was so good, is they are not a tool. They are your team players, and you have to treat them just like you would, whether they're part of the DENS platform or whether it's local counsel, the way you treat somebody just down the hall. And when you invest in them, they are going to feel that and they're going to invest back in that relationship. So you don't want to have a situation where it's a one-off. You send work to a lawyer in Germany, you really don't spend time developing the relationship, and it's a one-off. You want them to say, wow, I loved working with Ryan, or I loved working with Gary. How can we continue to do that? And once you find those people who are like-minded, it really puts you in a different, really elevates your practice, because you go from one of hundreds of lawyers who are doing purely domestic work in Canada, competing against a shrinking legal market, to one of very few lawyers that are thinking about this on an international basis that really can elevate your practice.
Thank you, Ryan. And there's something small I want to add to that. But before I do, I will ask Allison the next question and then come back to her in 30 seconds. So, Allison, I know you spoke a little bit about lawyers in private practice making it easy for you or being easy to speak to. But what other avenues have you found that add value to you as in-house counsel that lawyers in private practice have done or that they could do? But just as you think about that, I want to add one last one of my thoughts to what Ryan and Fran said, because Ryan, to your point, it's so important to be purposeful when you go to these events, especially internationally. One thing, being in the business of language and cultures, you realize some cultures require a lot more of that relationship building before you start transacting together. Sometimes in North America, you can do 1-2 meetings. If people, once the credibility is established, people will start doing business. But let's say you're doing business in Brazil or whatever, a variety of other countries. Sometimes it may be 5-6 meetings, building some trust, etc., before a transaction can happen. So that investment that both you and France spoke to around conference, around going and seeing them in person time after time, just becomes inevitable and key. But that's also your differentiator, right? So for anyone that is willing to do that, that will make them stand out. Sorry, Allison.
No, that's great advice. So from a general counsel perspective, if there is one thing that I hope you take away from today, it's that you must understand your client's business. And it sounds really obvious, but I cannot tell you, more people don't do it than do. All types of service providers, not just lawyers, marketing, everyone else that comes into the professional services world. And from my perspective, and I think most in-house counsels would say this to you, like, we live and breathe our business, not the legal issues, not the updates from regulators. That's what we rely on you for. It just completely discredits a service provider if they don't know anything about what you do. And some tools that I think, again, I apologize if this sounds super remedial, but no one really told me this when I was junior. In the public company context, like, we publish, reports every quarter. We have a quarterly conference call for analysts that anyone can dial into. I cannot tell you how few times I see external counsel dial into those. I mean, I'm sure some of my external counsel listens to them, the recording afterwards, and I have seen, some on there, but I think a lot of lawyers don't know that that's an option or available to them. Someone told me once, if you want to know something about a public company or even a fund, the best thing you can do is take the last 10 annual reports and read the letter to shareholders that's at the very front of the report. It will tell a story. If you read, go back 10 years and read the 2-page letter for every single year up to today, you'll be able to piece together the general trend of the business. And you don't know, I never expect a lawyer, an external lawyer, to know everything about our business, but it's pretty easy just to look on our website and see that we own retail properties as opposed to build condos for the most part. And we don't own any properties east of Montreal, like, just kind of basic things that show me that you have taken an interest and that you know where I'm coming from. it just makes life so much easier, and it's just an easy way to connect. And again, I know everyone's super busy, but there are some quick things that you can do. Just go to the website, and you can be upfront and say, I haven't had as much time as I'd like to learn everything about your business, but I know you mostly have these types of tenants and, X, Y, and Z, and I'm gonna learn more about it. That's completely fine. But just make a bit of an effort, because it will help you provide way better service than someone that doesn't know anything. And just by doing that, like someone also said to me once, just by reading all the pre-reads for a meeting, you will be the most prepared person in the room. And we all know, like, you don't always have time, but if you're looking for a confidence booster and you are looking to meet new clients or make new connections, just learning about the business will take you so far, because it's what we're thinking about. And then the other really important point for an in-house person that I wanted to reference was just to remember that you're dealing, I think Ryan said, when you're really junior, you can be intimidated. What am I going to have to talk about? Just remember you're just dealing with a person that has all the same issues that you have. And having empathy for your client and putting yourselves in their shoes goes such a long way. Like understanding like who's their executive team, do they like things packaged, really quickly and top line, or do they want to hear all about the issues, like, help, whatever, what's that, Jerry Maguire, help me help you. Like, if my CEO doesn't really want to hear all the details about the issue, it's helpful for my external counsel to understand, like, this is the kind of deliverable that she's going to be asked to provide. So we're going to help you get there. And just, understanding that interpersonal dynamic, or what issues are keeping your client up at night. Like, those are basic things that you can do no matter how junior you are or what type of law you practice. If you're in a full service firm, you don't need to be the expert in that particular area, but you can say, I'm going to go speak to my amazing colleague, Ryan or France, they do this, and I know they've had this issue before. Like, that just takes a big weight off your client's shoulder, because it demonstrates that you understand where they're coming from and, how they like to work. And so, some of the really easy things that, especially as a junior, can seem much more complicated, they're not. Like, that person that you're trying to please is really just like you, and trying to please someone else, whether it's their board of directors or, their CEO or CFO. They're also required to meet expectations of someone else. And so the more you can help understand that and help them get there, the more they'll rely on you. And that's sort of what creates, you hear the term, we've all said it several times today, trusted advisor. Well, how do you develop that? It's really that empathy point. It's putting yourselves in the shoes of the person that you're trying to help. And, that will help you go the extra distance and develop that rapport that ultimately leads to, a long-term trustworthy relationship.
Allison, some excellent points there. I'm actually going to go download some letters to shareholders for a few of the clients following our call and in preparation for some upcoming meetings. So, I had mentioned that we would do a bit of a round robin as we get close to the end. And Franz, I'll start with you, Ryan, and then Allison. Really, what I'm looking for from the three of you is any tips, any sort of key things that you're like, I wish Gary had asked about this, or that I had thought about this, but I didn't get a chance to go to. So that so free flow, it could be on any of the topics we touched on or otherwise. I just thought this may be a good opportunity to do it, and then so we'll do 1 to 2 minutes each, and then wrap up.
Thanks,
So
Gary.
Franz, start with you.
Thank you. Building up on something that Allison just said right now very quickly. to be the trusted advisor is the person that the client knows they can call and is going to look after their business more than they will look after themselves, right? So I can tell you very quickly an example. I had one of our major clients, a GC, had to travel, and the in-house lawyer, all crisis, all hell broke loose. Well, this person was completely unavailable, and essentially I was on speed dial, and I basically told them, listen, you can call me anytime. I'm here to support you. And we had to go through absolutely so many things. And when the GC came back, he said, I never worried because I knew you were going to look after my people the way that you look after me, right? So it's not only, again, not only the GC or not only that contact person, it's everybody that matters for that person, because for that person is their family. Okay, so it's very important that you, because I've seen this mistake committed as well. Oh, lawyers that treat very well the general counsel, but as soon as somebody on their lane actually connects with them, they treat them horribly. And that's a horrible thing to do, first of all, as a person, but regardless, you have to understand, you treat, they're all their family. So you treat everybody as a family. So tips very quickly, tips to provide, I think, round it all about, we talk about, get to know what matters to your clients, and again, and their family, internally and externally. I think it's important, share useful information, make introductions, help them with connection, add value. Okay, everywhere that you can add value is a good thing, and you can do it in many different ways. If you know what matters and what they care about. Approach everything with a strategic mindset. It's a business. You are a business, you're part of a business. Lawyers don't think that way. You need to start thinking that it is a business. So approach that, have a business plan, think about what you want to do, and be intentional. Intentional. I think there was a very quickly, one of my favorite quotes ever is a quote from Michelle Obama that says, you have to practice success. Success doesn't just show up. If you aren't practicing success today, you won't wake up in 20 years and be successful, because you haven't developed the habits you need to success. So you need to think about who you want to be and start practicing that today. And in order to do that, you need to be intentional. So care about what you're doing. Then promote, connect, cross-sell, promote others. You don't need to necessarily focus on yourself. Get to know your peers, get to know your firm, your company, whatever it is you're setting. And, first of all, you're establishing and increasing your connections internally or in your own organization, but then you're able to communicate and connect better with others that way. When you're working with international counsel or international people, again, appreciate what they bring to the table. They're not a tool. And to work together as a team for the benefit of the client. You not just basically keep them separate. And I think the last thing is, be creative, involve others, but enjoy the process. People get too worried. Allison was saying, we're all humans, and we're all worried that we're going to say and do the wrong thing. I know. And we all going to say and do the wrong thing at a certain point in our life. Let's be clear about it. But if you just relax and understand that there's always a tomorrow, and at the end of the day, everything is going to be okay. If we all, after being practicing so many years, of course, I made mistakes 1,000,000 times and 100 times. But at the end of the day, if your heart is in the right place and you're putting the effort and you're trying to have fun, things will work out. So relax, enjoy, and have fun. I think that will be my last point.
Thank you, Franz. Ryan, any last minute thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important before we ask lawyers who are already really busy to spend a lot more time in business development. I think it's always important to focus on the why. Why are we doing that? Why are we investing the time? Quickly, from a monetary perspective, it makes a huge difference to have your own book of business. From a job satisfaction perspective, it's great to have your own clients and friends, and it really allows you to create your own business and have some independence. I really think it's important for lawyers to get away from having their Outlook box dictate what they do every day. It's easy for people to wake up and say, oh, I've got 40 emails. I'm going to put the blinders on. I'm going to deal with that. I encourage people to strategically say, whether it's creating a business plan, but even more simply saying, every week, I am going to slot a certain amount of time for business development. I'm going to have a certain number of coffees, a certain number of lunches. Build that into your plan and recognize that it's something that's going to take a long time to do. And also finally remember that it's going to feel awkward. It's going to feel uncomfortable. But just start doing it. Don't get caught up in this paralysis by analysis. Get out the door, start talking to people, and you're going to refine your approach as you go through it. And before you know it, it's going to be something you feel very comfortable. You're going to be seeing some great returns. And hopefully in my case, or similar to my case, it really becomes the best part of your job because it turns into these lifelong relationships that you can cherish and keep.
Thank you, Ryan. Allison, last 30 seconds. Anything
Yeah, I'll
that
keep it really
didn't get-
short. I'm going to make a few very short points. So, your clients see, the full picture, and I think it's been stated a few times, how you treat people is really important. So I always notice when someone says we, as opposed to someone who says I all the time. Your peers or your future clients, keep in touch with them. You only have one reputation. Treat everyone with respect. And then I would just say, take ownership for the people that are more junior. I know it's hard. You have so many things to do and you have billable targets, but you work for a firm, but your practice is really your own. And I know we all want to be really collaborative, and that's what the firms tell you all the time, but you also own your career and your practice and your reputation, and it's okay to take ownership over that and think about, where you want your career to take you and be proactive about that. And that's something that, it's important to keep in mind. So, what is your workplace? We always think about what we're giving our workplace, but what are you getting from it, and how are you then repurposing that, for more success for you and your team and your colleagues? I think all of that will take you a very long way.
Well, thank you, Allison, and thank you to all three of you for today, and to our partners for this event, the Legal Marketing Association and Monjack. It's been great having you, and thank you to the audience for bearing with us, and for any of you that will listen to it afterwards. Thanks again. Great to see everybody.